a bridge that saves lives. Picture driving through the Canadian Rockies at dusk, when suddenly a massive elk steps onto the Trans-Canada Highway. You slam the brakes. Maybe you stop in time, maybe you don't. This happens thousands of times yearly across Canada. Wildlife vehicle collisions kill dozens of people annually, injure hundreds more, and cost over $200 million in damages. A 1,500-pound moose hitting a car at highway speed is catastrophic for everyone involved. But here's the thing. These collisions are completely preventable, and the Banff Wildlife Crossing in Banff National Park has proven exactly that. The Trans-Canada Highway cuts directly through Banff National Park, bisecting critical wildlife habitat. When built in the 1950s, nobody considered how it would impact animals. Roads were for people, period. By the 1980s, the consequences were impossible to ignore. Dead bears, elk, and moose lined the highway regularly. The road had created an impenetrable barrier, fragmenting the ecosystem and isolating animal populations. Animals need to move across landscapes to find food, mates, and territory. Block those movements and populations crash. Parks Canada faced a dilemma. They couldn't shut down a major highway, but they couldn't watch wildlife disappear either. The first wildlife crossings appeared in the early 1980s as experiments. Would animals actually use human-made structures to cross over highways? Results were mixed initially, but researchers learned crucial lessons. Different species need different designs. Grizzly bears need wide, open crossings with good sightlines. They don't like feeling trapped. Wolves are more adaptable, but prefer natural-looking corridors. Elk and deer need structures that feel safe from predators. This led to the Banff Wildlife Crossing, designed specifically based on years of studying animal behavior. Biologists spent years tracking animal movements to identify natural wildlife corridors, pathways animals habitually use. The overpass was strategically positioned to reconnect habitat that the highway had severed. The structure spans 50 meters wide, with a gentle, natural slope that makes crossing feel effortless. Unlike a concrete bridge, the surface is covered with native soil, transported from the surrounding forest, up to a meter deep in places. Trees, shrubs, and grasses grow naturally on top, creating what looks like a continuation of the forest floor. This matters enormously. From an animal's perspective, they're not crossing a bridge, they're simply walking through the woods. The crossing looks, smells, and feels like natural habitat. Dense, native vegetation on both approaches provides cover and visual continuity. High wildlife fencing extends in both directions along the highway, funneling animals toward the overpass rather than onto the road. The message is clear. You can't go across at ground level, but you can walk over the top. Camera traps reveal an astonishing parade of wildlife using the overpass daily. Grizzly bears are the most significant users. These habitat-sensitive animals regularly bring cubs across the bridge, showing they truly trust it. Black bears use it even more frequently, appearing during all seasons. Wolves travel across in packs, sometimes pausing to mark territory on the structure. For wolves with territories spanning hundreds of square kilometers, these crossings are essential. Cougars move quickly and confidently. Elk use it constantly, sometimes dozens in single herds backed up like rush-hour traffic. Moose, deer, coyotes, lynx, wolverines, and countless smaller mammals, even porcupines and weasels, all use the structure regularly. The overpass has become a community highway for wildlife. Here's what most people don't realize. Animals aren't born knowing how to use wildlife crossings. Getting them to consistently use structures like the Banff Wildlife Crossing requires patience and behavioral conditioning. Initially, usage rates are low. Animals approach, investigate, turn back. Some are bold and venture quickly across. Others take years to build confidence. Social learning is key. When a mature elk cow leads her herd across successfully, younger animals learn it's safe. They remember and repeat the behavior. Over time, crossing becomes collective knowledge passed through generations. The fencing system helps by eliminating alternatives. When animals encounter the barrier and follow it, they're led to a crossing. This consistent experience reinforces the lesson. Different species have different learning curves. Elk and deer adapt within a year or two. Bears take 3 to 5 years. Once established, usage increases year after year. Animals aren't just using crossings as convenient alternatives, they're reshaping how they navigate the landscape. Parks Canada monitors every crossing structure with remote camera traps operating 24/7 year-round. Every animal passing across is photographed, cataloged, and logged. The data is staggering. Hundreds of thousands of successful wildlife crossings documented since monitoring began. Thousands pass across the Banff Wildlife Crossing alone each year. Researchers track individual animals using unique markings or collars, discovering that some bears use the same crossing repeatedly like a personal commute. Camera traps capture predator-prey interactions, playful bear cubs, hesitant first-time users, and confident regulars. Scientists have studied genetic implications, comparing populations on either side of the highway before and after crossings were built. Results show crossings facilitate gene flow, preventing the genetic isolation that threatened populations. Before wildlife crossings, the Trans-Canada Highway through Banff was a death zone. Collisions with large wildlife occurred multiple times weekly, with hundreds annually. After construction, collisions plummeted by over 80% in areas with crossing structures. Some sections saw 90% reductions. These aren't small improvements, they're transformative changes. Each collision costs $10,000 to $200,000 in vehicle damage, medical expenses, and lost productivity. By preventing thousands of collisions, the system has saved tens of millions of dollars. Add the value of human lives and animal populations saved, and the return on investment is undeniable. Since monitoring began, over 200,000 successful wildlife crossings have been documented. That's 200,000 instances where animals navigated what was once impassable or deadly. For species like grizzly bears existing at low densities, this connectivity means the difference between survival and extinction. Banff's wildlife crossing system has become an international blueprint. Conservation professionals and engineers worldwide visit to study the crossings. What makes it influential is rigorous documentation. Decades of monitoring data and peer-reviewed research provide a scientific foundation others can build on. Projects in Montana, Wyoming, California, and Europe explicitly reference Banff's model. Design principles developed at Banff Wildlife Crossing, natural substrate, adequate dimensions, good sightlines, habitat integration are now standard worldwide. The understanding that different species need different crossing types has transformed infrastructure planning globally. Banff's success shifted the conversation in transportation planning. Wildlife connectivity is no longer an afterthought, it's essential infrastructure, as fundamental as bridges or tunnels. Wildlife crossing maintains ecosystem health at landscape scale. It allows predator-prey relationships to function naturally, prevents genetic isolation, and enables seasonal migrations essential to ecosystem resilience. Without these structures, the highway would have split Banff into northern and southern sections with diminished wildlife populations. The crossings literally hold the ecosystem together. The 3-decade research program emerging from Banff has fundamentally advanced road ecology, the study of how roads affect ecological systems. It provided long-term data showing not just whether crossings work, but how and why. The Banff Wildlife Crossing is objectively just a bridge over a highway, nothing glamorous. You could drive under it 100 times without noticing. But that's exactly the point. The most successful conservation infrastructure disappears into the landscape. For wildlife using it daily, it's not a human-made structure, it's simply part of the terrain. Yet its impact is profound. It represents a fundamental shift in our relationship with nature. For most of human history, development meant dominating nature without regard for other species. Roads went where we wanted, wildlife be damned. The Banff Wildlife Crossing embodies a different philosophy. We can build necessary infrastructure while respecting and accommodating other species. With thoughtful design, scientific rigor, and genuine commitment, coexistence is possible. As climate change accelerates and habitat fragmentation intensifies, wildlife connectivity becomes more urgent. Animals must shift ranges in response to changing conditions. Isolated populations become vulnerable. Infrastructure that facilitates movement rather than blocks it will be essential. Every grizzly that walks safely across
every wolf pack that crosses unimpeded, every elk herd that completes its seasonal migration, these testify to what's possible when we make space for wildlife in our modern world. The bridge is more than concrete and earth. It's a lifeline, a promise, and a blueprint for a future where humans and wildlife genuinely share the landscape. That's the legacy of a simple bridge in the Canadian Rockies, and that's why the Banff Wildlife Crossing matters.